Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Double Play. Today, Jack and I are here to talk some more baseball with you guys. But first off, before we get into a couple different topics we've got today, Jack, how have you been since our last episode last week?
It's been good. Of course, the last episode I forgot to record on Zoom, so it was an audio-only episode. That was my fault. I had to scrap a couple segments, but we're going to bring it back for you guys this week because the dedicated fans want to get some of those fun segments in. But a lot happened in baseball. I mean, there's a lot that's happened, but it's kind of focusing on the fact that there's 1.5 weeks left. Like, we're pretty much a couple sleeps away from knowing the full MLB playoff picture. We've already seen a couple teams clinch playoff spots and divisions and number one overall seeds, your Dodgers being the number one overall seed in the National League, that like in a couple days, in every day that comes, we're going to know a lot more about the MLB playoffs. So 1.5 weeks left. I've been good. How have you been?
I have also been good. TCU, another win this week. They won the Iron Skillet battle against SMU. So big rivalry game that we got the dub on. This coming weekend's Parents' Weekend, so I'm excited to see my family. And then we play Oklahoma, so I don't have good expectations for that game, but it'll be a fun weekend.
Well, Oklahoma, they're undefeated no longer, and all the Oklahoma fans that come at USC are a lot quieter this week, I've noticed. USC 4-0 for first time they finished September undefeated since I believe 2010. Things looking up under Lincoln Riley. Got a game this weekend against Arizona State, who I'm not sure how close that one's going to be, but it's definitely been fun. This isn't a football podcast, though. We kind of talk about football in the Welcome Back Now recently, but not a football podcast. We're here to talk about baseball. Biggest news in baseball recently, Albert Pujols, 700 home runs in Dodger Stadium. He cranked two to left field in one game to get to 700. How electric. Big hats off. Congratulations to Albert Pujols.
Yeah, it was Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols both two away from the records, and if you told me someone was going to hit two in a day and get their record, I thought it was going to be Aaron Judge. Was not expecting that kind of day from Albert Pujols, but en route to a lopsided victory against the Dodgers. That's what I was looking for. He hits 2 home runs. He hits 700. It was awesome that it's at Dodger Stadium. Kind of the place that kind of rejuvenated his career a little bit, even though it was just last season. But I mean, he's having a great year. It's kind of a little overlooked, but if it's not at Busch, I feel like Dodger Stadium was cool to see, and it was cool because I was of course as a Dodger fan watching it live. So it was actually, I got it spoiled for me because my stream was behind on Apple TV. So I got the notification. I was playing, I think I was playing Monopoly with the game on, and I got a notification. Albert Pujols hits 3 home run. I was like, everyone shut up! And then next pitch, I watched the home run. So it was kind of cool to see, and but it was awesome.
And I put out a tweet about this, and you can see both of our Twitter handles now on the screen. You can make sure to go follow us. But it sucks that Apple TV had that broadcast, because imagine being one of the Cardinals' like longtime either TV or radio broadcasters. You followed Albert Pujols for probably like 15 plus years of your career, and he's right about to hit 700. And the one game that Apple TV has of the Cardinals, he hits both of the home runs he needs, and they get to call on TV the Albert Pujols 700 as opposed to you getting to call it. I don't know. I would just like, that would just hurt, like to not get that chance. Of course, they're probably still on the radio, but I don't know. That's just like, good for Apple TV, obviously, with the new product that they get that big moment, and I'm sure it'll be a big springboard for them in the future, but I don't know, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed Apple TV has gotten a little bit better at. We talked about that a little bit during the first one, but yeah, I see where you're coming from, especially your perspective as a guy who wants to you know what I'm trying to say.
As a broadcaster, yeah.
As a broadcaster, so but. Yeah, one thing that was cool that we did get to see from MLB Network, Greg Amsinger predicted this. Was it back in April? I believe the prediction happened.
I believe so.
Because like they were talking about Pujols potentially hitting 700. He needed 21 at the beginning of the year. He's at 21 now, so he hit it. But he was saying Friday night in September at Dodger Stadium, he's going to hit it. He said off Clayton Kershaw, so he was wrong in that one. But nonetheless, he got the exact day right that he was going to hit 700 home runs. So that was a crazy prediction that I thought was just kind of cool about the whole thing.
And honestly, like, even when he was on his hot streak earlier in the year, I didn't think he was going to get all the way to 700, because I'm like, he needs this many. he doesn't play all the time. Of course, they're trying to get him, I think, more run recently, but I didn't think that he was going to get to 700. I thought it was kind of a long shot, and he did it with like 2 weeks to spare too, which I was kind of surprised about. Good for him that he gets to do it in Los Angeles. It would have been even funnier if it happened like against the Angels. But I mean, Albert Pujols, a guy who was left for dead a couple years ago after 2 really injured seasons, thought to be one of the worst big contracts given out when the Angels signed him, and he just never really lived up to what he was getting. And he's bounced back. He's turned into a guy who only hits lefties, but he's been a lot better, really revitalized his career, gets to 700 home runs. I think that for a fan favorite among many, this is a big deal. And of course, 700, there's only 4 guys now, including him, that have ever done it. So that's a big deal for baseball.
Yeah, it was just kind of like looking back at his career. You mentioned his time in Anaheim was a little disappointing, and I mean, it was like 10-ish years he was there, which is just surprising me how he got to 700. I mean, just with the narrative, like, oh, he never lived up to it. He wasn't the Albert Pujols. He was in St. Louis, but I mean, he still had 700 home runs in his career, and spending a good half of it for the Angels, the place where he wasn't that great. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, hats off to Albert Pujols. But we've got a little fun twist on this. What current player do you think has the highest chance to get to 700 home runs?
I think, disclaimer, I don't think anyone in the league right now is going to, but if you had to go most likely, there's some names that we've written down. I think you start with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., plays the same position that Pujols has played the majority of his career, switched from third base to first base. 23 years old, he's played 4 seasons, including 1 COVID year, which was only 60 games, so 102 career home runs already. He's got 600-ish more to go. If he averages 30 home runs every season until he's 40 years old, that's 612 home runs. So again, that's assuming he's playing till 40, assuming he can average 30 until then, but we've also seen him average more than 30 across the stretch. He averaged 39 the last 2 seasons. So if he hits some just crazy prime and really turns it on, plays like an MVP for 5 to 7 years, it's possible. That's definitely one name.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, you're doing this math. He averages 30 home runs for the next 17 seasons. He's 17 seasons. He still falls about 100 home runs short. So that was just ridiculous to me when I was doing this math. The next guy was Juan Soto, also 23 years old. He's got an extra season on Vlad Guerrero. But remember, these one short might help. It'll be interesting to see if long term, maybe they fall within 20 and maybe you get a full season in 2020 and while they're still hitting bombs. But so 5 seasons, same age as Vladdy, but he has 124 home runs, does Juan Soto. And he's averaged 30 in full seasons since he started in the bigs in 2019. He was in kind of part-time. He played around 100 games in 2018, and then obviously 2020, the shortened year. So if he does that, average 30 until age 40 season, again, he gets 628. So that's another one that's not too crazy to say. I mean, like we said, it probably won't happen, but Juan Soto potentially, maybe at least 600.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned, I feel like everyone's mentioning this second half since he's been traded to the Padres. He's been struggling. He's still having a very good season. The home runs, though, have been down. He's such a pure hitter that I think sometimes he doesn't focus on hitting home runs, which, I mean, a guy like Albert Pujols, like, he can crank a home run at any point. Like, you look at guys that you just know, like, if they're getting a hit, it's most likely a home run. You like Pete Alonso, Aaron Judge, like, these guys just crank home runs. Juan Soto can kind of do all of it, so I don't really know if he's the pure home run hitter to be able to get to 700. That being said, though, he's got a good combination of youth and the ability to hit home runs. Like, I'm not saying Juan Soto can't hit home runs. Watch him in the home run derby, and you can clearly tell that he can hit some nukes, but I just don't know if he's focused enough on the actual home runs to get to 700. A couple more names that we put out. Fernando Tatis Jr., suspended right now, but I mean, you can't not put him on this list. 23 years old. He's got 81 home runs in 273 career games, so not even 2 full seasons, and that's over 40 home runs across a couple seasons. So, you know, Fernando Tatis, if he gets back and he's healthy for a long period of time, has a chance. And then Ronald Acuna Jr., 24 years old, 112 home runs, not as many this year as it seems like he's been limited due to injury. So I'd say that's kind of like the second tier of players behind Vladdy and Juan Soto, but guys that you at least have to throw on the list.
Yeah, and like we're doing all this math. The bottom line is that we're unlikely to ever see anyone at least currently playing and reach 700 home runs. Like we said, only 4 people all time have done it. And so we're just, bottom line is we're lucky to witness what Albert Pujols, his greatness and what he's been able to do for 20 plus years now in the major leagues. And he's one of the best power hitters, one of the best sluggers of all time. So congratulations to Albert Pujols.
Because it really does take just a perfect combination of youth. So starting really early on, being really young, health, consistency, and of course, like Albert Pujols wasn't the most consistent player when he was in Anaheim, but he was always consistent with the home runs. And before he got to the Angels, I mean, he was consistently hitting 45-ish home runs a season with the Cardinals. So and he's been playing since, 2000? Like, you just have to be able to play for way too long, be way too good for a long period of time, and be healthy. And you think if Albert didn't lose those 2 seasons, if he didn't have the COVID year as well, like maybe there's a chance he's sneaking up higher on that list, passing Babe Ruth or Hank Aaron or maybe even Barry Bonds. But still, 700, it's a big feat. And I think Albert Pujols is a player a lot of people left for dead. 700 home runs, I think that's a pretty good thing to end your career on. Plus, the Cardinals probably going to have the 3 seed in the playoffs.
Yeah, another team that's going to have the 3 seed in the playoffs, the Guardians, and they clinched the AL Central. The AL Central is a division we've talked about kind of surprisingly a lot, but my dreams, if you have following along, my dreams of the White Sox winning the division have officially died. And I even went back on it. I still took the White Sox last week. And then, like, before we even put out that episode, in the time of recording an episode, it seems like the Guardians swept the White Sox and their magic number was down to 2. So they clinched it this weekend. Kind of expected this division to go down the wire just a little bit more, but like I said, that sweep of the White Sox kind of put it away. And I mean, congratulations to the Guardians. Did not see this one coming. If we are going to be completely honest, at the beginning of the season, it seems like no one has. I don't know if you've seen their like tweets and their social media posts. They're kind of funny awesome to see. But so kind of everyone not wrote them off, but did not have these expectations of them. So good for the Guardians in their first season.
Yeah, I'm with
win the Central.
I'm with you. I was just like, I saw that they clinched. I think it was yesterday, and I sent it to you. I'm like, oh, too bad for your White Sox. You're like, huh? And I was like, oh, the Guardians just won the AL Central, and we were both kind of like, already, really? Like, we just had talked about how, like, I said I think they're going to, because I jumped off the White Sox bandwagon pretty early when I just saw how poorly they were playing early in the season. But like, I just felt like it was way too early for that division to already be decided. Like, I figured it would be the last or second to last division to be decided. Like, the Yankees haven't even won the AL East yet, but somehow the Guardians have won the Central. And I mean, we've talked about them a lot this season, but really all we've said is that they are a surprising team. And then up until last week, of course, we shouted out some individual performances, but just some team narratives as a whole. They're the youngest team in baseball. They've got the 4th lowest payroll in the league, and they set the record this season with 16 rookie debuts. So they've had 16 rookies come up and debut. They're really not paying anyone. They're the youngest team in the league, and they're in the playoffs, like, with time to spare, winning their division. So I think that's hats off to the Guardians. You can go back and listen to our episode last week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, about some of the things we got to say, but they've got young pieces that we like. Yes, they're surprising, but also, I mean, you got to value what they did this season. They've been a good baseball team, like a really good team. And I'm curious for you, like, what do you think their ceiling is in the postseason? Because, of course, it's all fun and games until you have to go play in October.
Yeah, I think the advantage for them is they'll winning the division. They'll get the 6th seed, so they'll get the worst wildcard team among the Blue Jays, Mariners, or Rays. It seems like it's going to be, and we'll talk about how we think that's going to shape out a little bit later. But if I had to be completely honest, I don't think they're going to make it out of the wildcard series. I think those 3 wildcard teams kind of match up well with them in a 3-game series. It will be in Cleveland, so maybe the atmosphere is bumping and they get that little boost. But if we're talking about ceiling, I honestly think the ceiling is the ALCS for this team. I think if they catch the Yankees in a bad series, because if they win, the 3 seed will not have to play the 1 seed, which is the Astros, until the championship series. So if they catch the Yankees in a bad series, I think they could beat them in the division series, because, I mean, we've seen the Yankees have pretty low lows this season when it seems like Aaron Judge is the only player who remembers how to play baseball on their team. So if they catch the Yankees in a bad 5-game stretch, you know, I mean, it's not ridiculous to say that this team can go to the ALCS, but I don't see them beating the Guardian or the Astros.
Yeah, I think I'm like 100% in agreement with you. Like, we've seen weirder things happen in the MLB playoffs than a team like this winning. I mean, there was the 2014 World Series where it was the two wildcard teams, Royals and Giants, in the World Series. Like, weirder things have happened. But in reality, like, I just don't think this team matches as well top to bottom. And, you know, of course, hats off to the youngest team in baseball making the playoffs. It also means that they've got a lot of guys who just have not played in the playoffs before, or don't have the experience playing even in high leverage games at the end of the regular season before. So it's going to be a whole lot of new. I don't think they make it out of the wild card, but if they're going to match up with a certain team and make it, I think that would be the Mariners. Like, I think that they match up pretty well with the Mariners, and the Mariners are a team I'm kind of worried about in the playoffs. They've got Julio Rodriguez, I believe, still on the IL, and then some of their pitchers, like Logan Gilbert's never pitched in the postseason before. Luis Castillo, I don't think has pitched in the postseason before. I'm not sure Robbie Ray has either, and those seem like guys that could potentially have blow-up starts, like, or because of the Blue Jays. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs last year, so won the Cy Young, but still has never pitched in the postseason. Some of those guys are liable to have blow-up starts sometimes, and Shane Bieber hasn't pitched well in the postseason, but he'll get a second shot at it. But it's like, that's just like, I've got questions about both teams, so it means that the Guardians have more of a chance. And I understand what you mean about the Yankees. Like, the Yankees have had bad stretches. So I would say ceiling is probably like maybe getting to the ALCS on like a wild shot that they run through two teams that are having down series. Like, it's a possibility. I think if they match up with the Mariners, like, that would be a toss-up for me, and I might end up predicting the Guardians. But if they're playing against the Blue Jays or the Rays, or maybe wildly the Orioles, sneak back in, like, I'm just not super confident about this Guardian squad in the playoffs. But again, hats off to them winning the AL Central after we both had them in third place, I believe, and had the White Sox winning 100 games. They showed up and they stole that division.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about maybe the potential matchups where they might be a little bit more favorable. So, I mean, with the postseason picture kind of taking shape a little bit, still lots to be figured out. But, I mean, what do you think is going to be the Guardians' first round matchup? And then also just playoffs as a whole, what do you think these wildcard matchups and seedings are going to be with a week and a half left in the season?
Yeah, so I sat down to try and hammer this out, figured out looking at the standings as they are right now in the wild card, looking at the teams that like these wildcard teams have to play, like, where are they? Are they at home or away? Who are they playing? What's their schedule like, to try and figure out the 3 through 6 seeds in both, and then how they would match up. I think right now, I mean, we've got 1-3 seed set with the Guardians. I think the Cardinals are a pretty fair bet to be the other 3 seed. I think they're going to win that Central Division, and they're just not going to have the same record as the NL East champ, or obviously the Dodgers, who have already clinched the 1 seed. So Cardinals and Guardians are the 3 in each league. In the National League, I've got the Braves coming in 4th. I don't think they win the NL East as of right now, which would make me right preseason prediction. But I got the Braves at 4. They're taking on the Padres, who have kind of snuck their way back into the 5 seed, almost under the radar a little bit. They're playing better. So Braves, Padres, 4-5. And then the 6th seed, I was shocked to look at the standings and see that the Phillies are like almost choking this away. After all the talk that I've said about the Phillies this year, saying that they're not a playoff team, like, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, and then me having to say, like, I was clearly wrong, like, we thought the NL playoff picture was set just about what the seeding was like. The Phillies, I think, are only a game and a half up on the Brewers right now. I looked at those two teams' schedules. The Brewers play all the rest of their games at home, and the Phillies play all the rest of their games on the road. I'm going with the Brewers to retake the 6th seed, knocking the Phillies out of the playoffs, much to my surprise. And so it would be Cardinals versus the Brewers, 3 versus 6 series, Braves versus the Padres, 4 through 5. I just can't believe that the Phillies are in that position where, like, right now they're fighting for their life.
Yeah, I mean, going into my eyes, spoiler alert, I agree with you there. I also had the Brewers in 6, and I filled this out on our doc before you did, and I thought that was going to be my hot take for the episode, that the Phillies kind of choked this away, their game and a half lead that they currently have. But to my surprise, we both had Cardinals and Brewers matching up in the first round, which will be a fun division matchup in St. Louis. That'll be a great atmosphere because St. Louis fans love their baseball. And then with the 4 seed, I'm going with my preseason prediction. I'm sticking with the Braves to win the division, and we're going to go with the Mets in the 4 seed. And I was looking at these team schedules. They are so the Braves have the rest of their games at home. They both play a series against the Nationals and the Marlins. The Braves have the Nationals this week and the Marlins at the end. And in between, they have a 3-game set against each other in Atlanta. And that series is going to be so fun. That series is going to decide the division.
That's the most important series in baseball this year, without a doubt.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, they have right now the Mets have a 1.5 lead. But, I mean, they've got the exact same schedule other than the way they play each other. So it's going to come down to that series, bottom line. And, I mean, they'll beat up on the Nationals and Marlins each. And then it's just going to come down to those 3 games this weekend, and it's going to be so fun to watch. And then
where is that one?
That one is in Atlanta, I believe.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
So that place is going to be bumping, and I'll confirm that real quick while I give the rest of my predictions. Yeah, it's going to be in Atlanta, a 3-game set. That's going to be fun to watch. But my 5 seed was the Padres as well. I mean, Padres, as much as it would be so funny for the Padres to miss the playoffs, they now are 3 games up on the Brewers, so the Brewers would have to jump them, the Phillies, and the Padres in order to get the Padres out of there. So don't know if that will happen in the last 8 to 9 games ish. But I'll get into the American League real quick. That's how my National League sets up the Cardinals, Brewers, and Mets, Padres. In the National League wild card, those will be some fun series to watch for sure. And then in the American League, we said the Guardians at 3. They're not going to take over the Yankees spot. And then I've got the Rays at 6 playing the Guardians. So I think, I mean, the Rays, I mean, they have that postseason experience through that roster, but I think players wise, I think the Guardians might have a shot in that series just because, I mean, I just don't know how the Rays are good. I just don't know how the Rays are always good. And then you got the Blue Jays and then the Mariners. Blue Jays at 4, Mariners at 5, and I would love to see that series. But that's how my American League stacks up. And I think it's going to be a good last week and a half of the season to see how these actually shape up.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing. I mean, I think the Blue Jays are pretty solidly, like I would guess that most people think that they're going to finish in 4th as of right now. And then it was just based on where am I putting the Rays and the Mariners. And I think the Rays are the better team, but I looked again at the schedule. I believe the Rays are on the road for all of their games. The Mariners have a very easy schedule. I know they play the A's this week. I think they have another series against the Rangers, and then one more series against a team that's I don't think very good. I'm blanking on who that is right now, but they're also, I think, entirely at home for the rest of the season. So I think they're 1.5 games back right now, or just barely. It might just be a half game of the Rays. So I'm just thinking like they're the easier schedule, and they might, I think, pass the Rays. Also, I wonder, because these teams really, I don't think, have to worry about a 4th team coming into the mix. Are they going to be trying hard to get the 5 seed, like the 4 or 5 or 6? Like, does it really matter to them? Would they maybe rather try and get the 6th seed to play the Guardians, as opposed to, if you're the Mariners, I'd rather play the Guardians than the Blue Jays. And
then if you win, you wouldn't have to face the Astros either. You'd have a much easier path to the championship series.
If the 6th seed wins, they don't go play the 1?
No, they don't reseed. So the winner of the 4-5 plays the 1.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Rays, like, this is best case scenario, because if I'm Tampa Bay, I'm thinking I can get through the Guardians, who I think the Rays might be the worst matchup for the Guardians. Just you're talking about no playoff experience versus the most playoff experience outside of the Astros in the American League. You're thinking you can go take down the Guardians, and you've taken your shots at the Yankees before. You've even taken your shots at the Astros if you get there to the American League Championship Series. So there's like a legitimate scenario, in my opinion, where these teams might try and get the 6 seed as opposed to the 5 or the 4.
It's definitely on paper. It seems like the strategically smart thing to do, but it'd be so crazy to me to see a playoff team tanking in the last like 3 games of the year to try and get a worse playoff seed. It's just crazy for me to think. I don't think it'll happen.
Neither do I. I mean, no chance to actually do that in professional sports. But I mean, and then too, if you're the Guardians, like, you're going into that matchup saying like, this team purposefully lost so they could play us, and I feel like that's just motivation you're giving them that they don't need.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. But we talked about these are the seeds that we think are going to shape up. But how about the matchups that you want to see in the wild card that you think will be the most fun to watch and kind of the best competition as well?
Well, I like the one that you brought up, Mets Padres, but since I'm going to be pretty loyal to my season prediction and this prediction I've had the whole time, I'll stick with the idea that the Mets are going to win the division. So then I think the one I would most want to see is one that I think is going to happen, and that's Braves Padres. Those are two young teams with stacked rosters who at points in the season really struggled, but at other points looked really unbeatable. I think their pitching matchups would be really fun. You've got just so many arms on each side. Like, where does Spencer Strider throw for the Braves? Like, you've got Charlie Morton, who's such a grizzled veteran and has pitched in the playoffs. And then for the Padres, I mean, they've got Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Blake Snell's been pretty good lately, Mike Clevenger. I always forget names when I'm talking about the Padres rotation. And matching up against the Braves, like, there's just so much young talent, and that would be such a high-powered series, and it would mean so much too. And then the winner of that would have to go play the Dodgers, and those are both teams that I want to see take on the Dodgers.
Yeah, that would be a good one. My one that I want to see the most is Mets Phillies. Citi Field will be rocking for a 3-game set, and just imagine those pitching matchups. You'll get DeGrom, and then
they would start Nola. Wheeler just came off the IL. It would be Nola.
Yeah, probably DeGrom, Nola, but then you get Scherzer, Wheeler in game 2. So, I mean, just the pitching matchups alone, I think it'd be great. And if the Phillies were to beat the Mets after sneaking into the playoffs, which we don't think they will apparently, based on our predictions, but if they sneak in and find a way to beat the Mets, that would be, wow, that'd be chaotic. Find a way to beat Scherzer and DeGrom in a 3-game series in New York. So, I mean, that would be a great one to watch. Another one that I think would be amazing to watch is Blue Jays Mariners in Seattle. Both of these teams are pretty young, and they're flashy, they're fun to watch, just the teams alone. But do you remember last year when the Mariners were making a push to playoffs in the last week or so of the season? T-Mobile
Safeco.
Park is what it is. T-Mobile
it was
Park
Safeco. Now it's T-Mobile Park.
It was Safeco. But that place was rocking. And can you imagine for an actual playoff series, their first one since 2001, I think the entire city of Seattle would be able to hear that. So, I mean, those are 2 matchups I want to see so bad in the playoffs.
Yeah, for me in the American League, Blue Jays Rays. I mean, they've been neck and neck the entire season, and I'd love to see them in a series. Of course, if the Mariners don't pass the Rays, this will most likely get this one as well, and I think that would be an interesting one. And then the winner of that would go take on the Astros, and I'd love to see the Astros against one of these teams, even if I think that, like, there's a pretty slim chance anyone's beating the Astros in the American League. But let's get into the question segment. That was a fun exercise. Of course, we'll probably be back next week or the week after talking about the actual playoff matchups and having to predict some real series, which if you've followed series locks, like, it's hard enough to predict who's going to win a series. Playoff series are like a whole different breed. Maybe we'll have to start like a new competition of like whose bracket gets more points, almost like March Madness, but that'll be really fun. But for me, I've got a fan favorite type of question. Everyone on TikTok loves the King of the Hill questions, and so I decided to make one for you with what I think might be one of the hardest positions to decide. Since you gave me third base, I'm giving you King of the Hill right field. So I give you a player, and then you have to decide, is the player that I present next better or worse than the other player? Whoever wins stays on, and I keep giving you more until we end up with one King of the Hill. So I'm going to start you off with Juan Soto, and the first opponent I'm going to give you is Kyle Tucker.
I think Kyle Tucker is very underrated, and I think he might be higher than people think if you're ranking all the right fielders, but I'm going to have to go Juan Soto. He's one of the best players in the league, period.
All right, 2 young studs, maybe top 10 players, Juan Soto or Ronald Acuna Jr.?
I'm going to have to stick with Juan Soto just because we know what the consistency is, what he can get on base. Ronald Acuna is maybe a little bit more flashy, but and can be better at times, but I think the consistency of Juan Soto wins.
All right, well, 2 guys that played in Washington then, Juan Soto or Bryce Harper?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because, I mean, if we're going long term, I mean, you have to go Juan Soto, but this is not what it is. It's who's the better player. And these 2 guys were 1 and 2 in MVP voting last year. And I'm going to have to go with the guy who won the MVP race, Bryce Harper. I think when he's on the field, and I think before he got hurt, he was having a great season this year as well. So I'm going to have to take Bryce Harper.
All right, then a couple more. Bryce Harper or Mookie Betts?
I gotta go. Oh my goodness, this is tough because Bryce Harper just won last year, but I feel like if you're going who's the better player, I feel like Mookie Betts is the better player. He's one of the best all around players in the entire league, and I'm not biased at all over here, but I mean just all around, he's got the speed, fielding, the arm, the bat, he's got all the tools, and I think Mookie Betts wins this one.
All right, Mookie Betts moves on. We've got a final challenger, the guy who's having the best season in baseball this year. Is he the better player, though? Mookie Betts versus Aaron Judge.
It's tough because I think the better player. Oh, it's tough, but like I said, I think Mookie Betts is the most all-around player. But if you look at the numbers, the only thing that's keeping Judge from being like the best player in baseball is probably the health. But if you look at Aaron Judge's numbers, when he's healthy, he's among the top all the time. I mean, he won MVP, or he should. He did not win MVP in 2017. That was Altuve asterisk. But he did that. Great years in between, and he's having one of the best seasons of all time. I'm going Aaron Judge. He's the better player when he's on the field.
All right, Aaron Judge is your king of the hill among right fielders. Yeah, he struggled with health early in his career, but I think people like that's followed him a little bit too long. He's not really had health issues in a while. It's knock on wood. I mean, Aaron Judge is one of the best players in baseball. Don't want him getting injured, especially going into a contract year. But I mean, Aaron Judge has been relatively healthy the last two seasons. He's put together a full season this year. I mean, he's even been more healthy than Mookie Betts has been this season. So I think you made the right choices there. I think it's bold to go Bryce Harper over Juan Soto, but it's something that like I might do as well. I mean, Juan Soto clearly the better player going forward, but right now, Bryce Harper, I don't know. It's tough, but I think Aaron Judge ending up as the number one makes sense.
And then my question for you is, if you can start a franchise right now with one pitcher and one position player, who do you choose? But the catch is one player has to be under 30 and one player has to be 30 or over. Which two players are you choosing?
So you told me this last night, so I had some time to prepare. I decided to pick who I would go with for each spot. So I've got a position player under 30 and a position player over 30, and I've got a pitcher over 30 and a pitcher under 30. So I figured I'd just give my picks and then decide like which pairing I'd rather have. So the position player under 30, I decided was the guy we just talked about. It's Juan Soto. He's, like we mentioned, 23 years old. He's already had a potential MVP season that you can even argue he should have won it last year. He's even in his down years, got like a 140 something WRC plus this season. He was I think a pretty easy pick for a position player under 30, though I thought about Jordan Alvarez, Austin Riley, Julio Rodriguez, because Julio Rodriguez is still like 22 years old, I think. So, and then a position player over 30, another guy we just talked about, Aaron Judge. He's 30 years old. I think he's going to turn 31 soon, but coming off the best season of anyone in baseball this year, I chose Aaron Judge if I'm going a position player over 30. Also thought about Mike Trout, Nolan Arenado, but Trout's health, Arenado's lack of, I think, position, like third base, I'm not sure that's where I would want to go. If I'm starting a franchise, I would lean Judge. And then pitchers, I go through this one quicker, but the pitcher over 30 would be Garrett Cole over Zach Wheeler, Jacob deGrom, because deGrom's 34. He's the same age as Clayton Kershaw, which is just crazy to think about. And then a pitcher under 30, I would go Logan Webb, just over Alek Manoah and Spencer Strider, because I think that Strider we've only seen for a season so far. Alek Manoah we haven't seen pitch in the playoffs. If I'm starting a franchise, I mean, Logan Webb's pitched in the highest profile games out of all those three guys, and he's only 1 year older than Alek Manoah, so I think that's what I would go with. So then it's just, would I rather have Juan Soto and Garrett Cole or Aaron Judge and Logan Webb? For me, it's an easy decision. I think I would rather have Garrett Cole and Juan Soto. So starting a franchise with a position player under 30 and a pitcher over 30, Juan Soto, Garrett Cole on my team.
I cannot believe you said Logan Webb there.
You would take Manoah or Strider over Logan Webb?
I would probably take Manoah. Yes,
Manoah's never pitched in the playoffs.
Okay, Logan Webb was like 2 games in the playoffs,
and he was maybe the best pitcher in the postseason last year. He's having like a very similar season to Alek Manoah. He's only a year older, so. I don't know. I think I'd lean Logan Webb. Like I think he might be a better pitcher in general. He's only 1 year older and he's got postseason experience. So,
okay, well, that's probably not the route I would have gone, is what I'm going to say. But I mean, let us know down below, who would you pick as the one position player and pitcher, one under 30, one over 30. I mean, there's a lot of talent in the league right now. There's not a lot of wrong answers that you could go with. So, I mean, it's fun to think about.
Based on some of the names I threw out, would you go with the same thing? Soto and Cole?
I'm not sure where I would go. I would have to. I didn't do the research for myself. I didn't go with my picks, but I think yours. You can't. It's hard to go wrong with those two guys.
Yeah, like there was other guys I considered, but another thing with Soto too is like he's very clearly shifts into a DH role when he eventually becomes older, and his ability to walk, I don't think he's ever gonna fade even as he grows older. And Garrett Cole, he's only 31, so he's younger than some of the pitchers. Like I think Zach Wheeler, or maybe he's 32, Zach Wheeler's 31, and then DeGrom's 34. But it was just like those are two guys that have been healthy too, that I wanted to make sure I had health on my squad, which even though I just said Aaron Judge doesn't have a track record, I do worry a little bit of like him being a really tall, strong right-handed hitter who has had problems in the past. Like getting over 30, I do slightly worry about how his swing will hold up over time.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard to go wrong there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we've got for you guys in this episode, Ryan. Unless you've got anything else, we can take it away, wrap up the episode.
No, just excited to see how this last week and a half finishes and see how our playoffs standings hold based off how they actually turn up. So it's going to be fun week and a half to watch.
Yeah, well, make sure you guys are following us on social, on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We'll have updates of the last week and a half. I'm sure we'll be talking about that Mets-Braves series, which is going to be so good. But that's all we've got for you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave a like and to comment and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well to get notified every time we upload. And then if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of our podcast platforms, please make sure to follow the show and leave a 5-star review. Our Twitter handles are on the page, and if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of our socials are down below as well. But thank you guys for watching. We've been the Double Play Podcast. We will see you next time for some playoff baseball.